Well, thanks for coming back. This is Talking Politics in Western Pennsylvania. I'm Bill Merrell, the host. This is part of the 10-part series on the Biden-Harris administration. This is part 8, Protecting Our Borders, which happens to be the second most important, other than the economic world that we live in, for this administration. As soon as I figure out, okay, once again, Protecting Our Borders. This is part 8. The terror threat has increased enormously. This came from Attorney General Merrick Garland, which is really interesting because he's in charge of everything that's going on. He could put limits on things and stuff, but apparently we'd rather worry about it than do something about it. I'm worried about the possibility of a terrorist attack in the country after October 7th, which was the Israeli situation. Garland told the House Judiciary Committee during a hearing on the Department of Justice DOJ oversight. The threat level has gone up enormously. Every morning we worry about this question. We try to track anyone who might be trying to hurt the country, he asserted. Now, the interesting part is that thousands and thousands of middle-aged, military-aged males have been allowed into the country, and they're worried about the threat. It's sort of contradictory. ICE rounds up 8 suspected terrorists released by Biden administration. What's the best part or worst? The border security of Biden administration vetted them before releasing them into our country. How many other terrorists and taxpayer-funded freebies are welcomed by the government of America? Government watchdog warns Biden administration lacks vetting of illegal aliens risk admitting dangerous individuals. A recent Department of Homeland Security Office Inspector General wrote a report revealed that the Biden administration needs to improve the screening and vetting of non-citizens and asylum seekers applying for administration or admission to the United States. As you see on the bottom, varied and inconsistent inspection procedures, which is leaving us all very vulnerable. California overwhelmed. Illegal immigrants secretly flown out as border crisis escalates. Now, once again, I try to stay as current to these facts as possible. I've been working on these programs for about 5 months now, and you see that there's some that will be included as of this morning. Once again, trying to keep everything up to date as current as possible. According to Desmond, these individuals were flown from San Diego Airport to Texas following their transportation from the border to the sanctuary state by Border Patrol agents. Texas is not a sanctuary state. California is. New York is. And they're all having major problems, as is Illinois. The alarming truth: 75% of arrests in Midtown Manhattan involves this demographic. Mayor Eric Adams has previously urged the city council to reconsider these sanctuary city laws. I would say about 75% of arrests in Midtown Manhattan are migrants, mostly for robberies, assaults, domestic incidents, and selling counterfeit items, one officer disclosed to the outlet. The situation is further complicated by sanctuary city laws that prevent the New York police from collaborating with ICE or inquiring about immigration statuses of offenders. As you see the New York Post, crime and again. Orwellian media denies Kamala Harris was border czar.
Talking about TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, the media, both here in Australia and in the US, not only have a severe case, but it appears incurable. They will straight out lie, gaslight, and push Democrat propaganda they know to be untrue. This week, after the quiet coup that saw 14 million votes invalidated, the democratic process disregarded, and Kamala Harris installed as the new presidential candidate, the Democrats were keen to distance the Veep from her role as the border czar, given that is one of the biggest failures of the current administration and a major issue in the upcoming election. And to their eternal shame, the bulk of the media dutifully repeated a Democrat talking point. Well, not Fox News' Peter Ducey, he still has a little thing called integrity.
Democrats on Capitol Hill are being handed this card with talking points about the vice president and the border. Do you know who's handing this out?
I have no idea. You probably should ask her campaign.
So the first one says Vice President Harris was never appointed border czar. There's never been such a position. It doesn't exist. Why are Democrats so sensitive?
Corinne Jean-Pierre there said she has no idea who handed out that little card attempting to rewrite history. She suggested asking Harris's campaign. Corinne, being deliberately clueless, is on brand. As for the majority of the media, from CNN to ABC to MSNBC to CBS, they were all ready to, in unison, repeat that lie. Have a look at the following minute of how they reported Kamala's appointment as the border czar at the time and what they claimed this week.
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People gonna have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar. President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar.
Orwellian. And that's just a small sample of the rewriting of history we've seen this week. And the so-called fact checkers, aka leftist activists masquerading as impartial truth seekers, well, they got into the act too. PolitiFact and USA Today ran fact checks claiming that Kamala was never the border czar. It was all some sort of right-wing conspiracy. I guess this dude must have been on the plot. Here's President Joe Biden announcing that his Vice President Harris would be leading efforts to stem the flood of illegal immigration at the southern border.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
And even the media was at one point putting some pressure on Kamala Harris to visit the border to do something about the record numbers of immigrants crossing that southern border illegally. More than 2 million a year under the Biden administration.
We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
She doesn't understand the point. And here is Kamala being asked about finally visiting the border as the person in charge of the response.
I've been to the border many times.
As the person in charge of the response.
So the important aspect of this visit is leading this visit after the work that we did in Guatemala and Mexico. Because as I've long said, I said back in March I was going to come to the border, so this is not a new plan. But the reality of it is that we have to deal with causes and we have to deal with the effects.
But she didn't deal with the causes or the effects. Under her watch, the Biden administration broke records for the numbers crossing illegally. But even during the height of the ongoing crisis, Kamala was claiming the border was secure and whatever problems existed, well, they were Trump's fault.
The first request we made pass a bill to create a pathway to citizenship. The border is secure, but we also have a broken immigration system, in particular over the last 4 years before we came in, and it needs to be fixed.
We're going to have 2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border's secure?
We have a secure border.
Once again, we can let that go on for another half hour, but there's no sense in it. I think the point has been taken. Kamala Harris has failed as border czar. Okay, over 10 million illegal immigrants have come into the country. There have been roughly 2 million known gotaways, and those are people that evaded the Border Patrol. There have been known gotaways than in there have been more known gotaways than in any previous decade. In July, there were 104,116 illegal immigrant encounters at our border. This is roughly 3,350 daily encounters, which is nearly 4 times more than the definition of a crisis set by the Obama DHS Secretary Johnson, who said in 2019 that more than 1,000 encounters a day overwhelms the system. In 2023, Harris said that the Biden-Harris administration immigration policies largely involved undoing President Trump's border security policies, which absolutely makes no sense, but what can I say? When Harris finally did visit the southern border, federal agents on the front lines were instructed to completely sanitize the area to hide the true severity of the crisis from cameras. Kamala Harris has failed as border czar, page 3. She had never spoken to either of the past 2 Border Patrol chiefs. Illegal immigrant crossing of our southern border nearly doubled under Harris, which reached over 300,000 in a single month. This is the highest number of illegal immigration crossing in recorded history. Over 200,000 Americans have died from the fentanyl being smuggled across the southern border by criminals. Once again, over the past 24 months, federal law enforcement seized an average of 2,020 pounds of fentanyl each month, enough to kill over 458 million people. And that's the total combination of citizens in the United States and Mexico. Under Harris, over 350 of these individuals who named appeared on the terrorist watch list were smuggled across the southern border. Like I said, when you have the Department of Justice saying that the terrorists in this country are a real threat, and we just keep inviting them in, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that this continues, and these people are still coming in today as we're talking. They haven't changed anything. 2 illegals killed a 12-year-old girl. Okay. Both of them entered the United States illegally, were charged with capital murder. 2 illegals allegedly lured a girl under a bridge in June, assaulted her before strangling her and dumping her body into the bayou. Because of the Biden administration's open border policies, catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program and let go. She clarified that this meant that they were released into the United States under the Biden's leadership after they committed the murder. If you or I, as citizens, did that, we'd be in prison. But under this administration, they just got let go. CEO alleges Biden-Harris administration is complicit in child trafficking. How the United States, instead of being the complicit middleman in child trafficking, human trafficking, and drugs, why don't they put a lid on that and control our borders? If Trump does one thing, he will win in a landslide 45 must pledge to find the 325,000 missing children. 325,000 missing children. That is more than the people in Washington County, okay, which is really, really quite disturbing. You have to understand that these numbers are astronomical, and these children are out there. You know, you see every day, you see pictures of puppies and how we should be taking care of them because they're tied up and stuff. But these children are out there being used and abused, and it's just terrible. And this administration continues to allow it. Senators take aim at Biden's support for bill giving illegal Chinese Communist Party members the right to vote. What is going on here? You know, not only do we see a card with Harris's picture on it belonging to the Communist Party, but now all of a sudden the Democratic senators are trying to push a bill to allow these people to vote. I'm sorry, I have a hard time with this kind of thing. Oh, and by the way, once DC really pushed this, they happen to be listed as one of the most dubious distinction of being the least desirable city in America. That's our capital. Okay, here's a little video that we'll show you, and the Democrats were against the border before they were for it.
This is just one more example of something that is not thought through and is primarily put forward for political consumption. The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders. The fence is now basically complete. Maybe they'll need a moat. Maybe they want alligators in the moat.
Secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary in some places.
We will not build a wall. Instead, we will build an economy where everyone who wants a good job can get one.
I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence. And let me tell you something, folks. People are driving across that border with tons, hear me, tons of everything from byproducts from methamphetamine to cocaine to heroin. It's all coming up through corrupt Mexico.
And the impulse is to hunker down, shut the gates, build walls, exit at this moment. Is precisely the wrong answer.
Former presidents have said to him that they wish that they had built a wall. Do you recall President Obama ever saying that?
Come on.
Construction of a 630-mile border fence create a significant barrier to illegal immigration on our southern land border. All along, the president's saying, well, I'll do DACA and Dreamers in return for the wall. He's got it. President Trump, if you want to open the government, you must abandon the wall.
Once again, the contradiction and the lies that people tell, especially politicians tell, are no surprise. And in fact, in this country, it seems to be what we've taken for granted, that our politicians are no longer interested in the welfare of the people. They're more interested in staying in power so they can benefit. All right, we're going to take a break right now, and we'll see you on the other side. Well, thanks for coming back. Once again, this is Talking Politics in Western Pennsylvania. This is our 8th program, or 8th part on dealing with, this one's dealing with the border problem that we have. Okay, once again, as we left for break, we showed you a short video where all of these folks were all for the border wall or border fence or border something, and then all of a sudden they decided to be against it. Okay, well, let's look at one of Obama's statements in 2005. President Barack Obama: "We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country." It's so amazing to see that they shifted so far from supporting the legal immigration to supporting 10 million new votes in the future by allowing them just to pour over the border. Texas seizes enough fentanyl to wipe out America and Mexico. They seized 500 million doses of deadly fentanyl under Operation Lone Star. That's enough to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States and Mexico combined. And this operation also resulted in the apprehension of 500,000 illegal immigrants and over 44,000 criminal arrests, leading to more than 38,000 felonies. While you were distracted, Biden quietly terminated over 350,000 asylum cases, effectively granting them mass amnesty. Now, you know what? These numbers, I mean, we have 300 plus million people in this country. So when we're talking about 10 million, is that really a problem? Let's take a look. Illegals during the Biden-Harris administration now number more than the total population of the 10 smallest populated states. So when you ask, is that important? Yeah, because every one of those groups, every one of those states could be run by illegals. Because if they just split up and put 586,000 into Wyoming, and they could run and ruin those states, period. So, I mean, like I said, we really do have to, pull our heads out and, in fact, try to get a handle on this. The need for ID for voting. Okay, one of the things that we showed earlier in the program is that the Biden administration and the Senate Democrats were trying to allow Chinese that illegally came across the border the right to vote. And also, Washington, D.C. was trying to give everybody the right to vote. Okay, the need for voting. You require it for the bank, the airport, the doctor, the pharmacy, school, gun stores, hunting. But they don't want voter ID, which I can't understand for the life of me. What's really interesting about this is that Harris required folks attending her rallies to show an ID. Why is her rallies more important than our country? I think that's a question that should be asked. The Senate border bill, they keep on touting that Trump told everybody to vote against the Senate bill. The Senate bill was disgusting, okay? And the non-government organization that helped draw up this bill are receiving billions of dollars of your tax dollar to house and feed these people. In California alone, they are in fact spending $600,000 to buy a unit in a building to house illegals. The worst part, veterans who have served this country are living on the streets. The border crisis would convert the Biden administration's destructive policies and violations of immigration into statute. As you see the next part here, which is really disgusting, the Secretary of Homeland Security has the discretion to activate the authority after the U.S. Custom and Border Protection encounters an average of 4,000 illegal immigrants a day. That's 1,460,000 per year. And that's what they wanted to give them. They wanted to give them the rights to allow over 1 million people into this country every year. Secure the Border Act. The Senate bill expands parole beyond medical circumstances and significant law enforcement or intelligence purposes for those arriving at or between land ports of entry. In other words, the heck with it. We didn't have to go with it. We didn't have to follow any of the rules that are in place. The Senate bills once again, it continued to be a disaster in violation of the Homeland Security Act and Section 103 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Mayorkas violates the rule which he removed U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE people, attorneys, and immigration judges from credible fear asylum cases. He removed them. So basically, just come on in. Go ahead. Go get your benefits, because we were providing medical, we were providing transportation, we were providing house, we were providing food, we were providing education. And if you go to Minneapolis, that fool gave illegals free college. Now, if you pay taxes, you don't get free college, but, you know, that's all right. The bill also accelerates naturalization for the I can't even say the word, Afghans, and gives Afghan allies refugee status for up to 10 years. Now, the problem with this is the fact we left 90% of the Afghans who helped us in Afghanistan. They didn't get out because the American embassy people took their passports and burned them. That was in our earlier program. Cash to illegal immigrants in new low in the Biden open border. The Wall Street Journal reported that the Biden administration was considering payments of up to $450,000 each to illegal aliens who were caught illegally entering the country in 2018. A family of 4 would receive almost $2 million. The families of the Border Patrol agents who die in the line of duty don't receive anywhere near that. The Biden administration invited a rush at the border, took away the tools to deal with it, and then threw Horse Patrol agents under the bus at the first uttering of a patently false narrative that they were whipping illegals. Revealed the charities making billions off the border crisis. Nonprofit organizations are making billions from the border crisis federal funding, with their CEOs are raking in as much as $1 million in annual compensation. Money that is being distributed among the non-government organizations to help fund the migrant crisis at the border has raised red flags for Americans whose tax dollar are going into the pockets of the organization's chief executives. According to the data, based on the 990 tax forms of organizations exempt from income taxes, nonprofits received billions of dollars in federal awards, which were then used to compensate the CEOs and fund questionable services like pet therapy.
Agents are begging DHS Secretary Mayorkas to show up and do something, but instead he just attended a fancy dinner party with MSNBC hosts and honchos celebrating Jen Psaki's new show.
Joe Concha joins us now. Joe, how bad does it look that Mayorkas was hobnobbing with MSNBC literally just moments after his Border Patrol chief, mind you, testified on Capitol Hill, and by on Capitol Hill I mean at the border on Capitol Hill, that the federal government does not have operational control of the border?
It looks elite. It looks out of touch. It looks apathetic towards what is absolutely a crisis to many Democrats now saying, at least those who have lawmaking abilities in Arizona and Texas are saying is absolutely a catastrophe and a crisis. And I guess, Todd, what we got was a preview of what Jen Psaki's new show is going to look like. Right. And if she, if she were to have Secretary Mayorkas on her show, why do we all get the feeling that he won't be asked even remotely one fair or tough question regarding his F- failure at the U.S. southern border? MSNBC simply does not care, by the way, how this looks. This was a celebration dinner for Jen Psaki's new show in public at a restaurant with plenty of photos being taken. And from what I've seen regarding Ms. Psaki so far during her appearances on the network, she is utterly uninteresting and inauthentic. You take Peter Doocy or Jackie Heinrich out of her life when she doesn't have a foil to spar against, instead put her in an echo chamber, you'll see how low those ratings are when they come out next week. Save the tape, Ashley.
You know, obviously it looks bad to America, but think about these CBP agents. You know, I was talking to Tom Homan yesterday, and he said that 17 of the agents have committed suicide. It's that bad to where they're taking their own life. And for them to see him going to these posh parties, what a slap in the face to those agents who are protecting our border when they just want him to come down there and do something, anything, Joe. But we do have... Sure.
Okay, once again, we can go let that go on, but it would just continue with the same stuff. DHS alarming oversight exposed. Thousands of migrant children are missing. All right. The interim report also highlighted that as of May 24, over 291,000 unaccompanied children have not been placed into removal proceedings because ICE has not served them with notices to appear or scheduled a court date for them. This implies that the number of unaccompanied children who failed to appear for their court dates may have been much larger than 32,000 had ICE issued notices or scheduled court dates for those 291,000 children. They lost them. They have no clue where they're at, but our border's secure. Aurora, Colorado. Police arrest 8, I can't even say it, gang members who have been terrorizing the city. All right, this gang out of Venezuela is in fact one of the most heartless gangs in the entire world. They will kill you for a dime. They don't care. You know, your life means nothing to them because that is what they do. All right. They have been living in Aurora, committing acts of violence. You may have heard that they raided a apartment building the other day, and with guns. So they weren't supposed to be there, but they in fact attacked the apartment building. But this is not the only act by these clowns. The same gang is in Texas. That gives an idea on how many of these illegals, gang members, in fact, have been allowed into the country. They're all over. They've been transported by our government and turned into cities that, in fact, don't have the wherewithal, the capability, or the potential to stop them. The gang, infamous for its involvement in human trafficking and exploitation, has reportedly taken control of downtown motel, transforming it into a hub of illicit activities. Illegal migrants, taxpayer-funded health care, tuition, driver's license. Once again, Waltz, 60, who was named Harris's vice president pick, has supported efforts to turn his home state into a sanctuary state, also backing officers' stance that cater to undocumented migrants. The sanctuary state is an unofficial term that refers to states that limit or deny local law enforcement cooperation with federal immigration. Ensuring drivers in our state are licensed and carry insurance makes the road safer for all Minnesotans. Waltz said in a 23 after signing the bill to allow thousands of illegal migrants in his home state with driver's license. She has also supported decriminalization of illegal immigrants, liking ICE officers to the KKK, and jumped on a false narrative that border agents whipped migrants. Once again, the left keeps coming up with lies and distortions. Their advertisements every day. They keep talking about Trump and his program 2025, which has been everything. It's been thrown out months ago, but their advertisements still included. And by the way, I just saw an advertisement today that they're bringing back that Harris worked at McDonald's, which she never did, which is also very interesting. As I said the other day, to paraphrase a phrase of McDonald's, do you want lies with that? The Ohio governor sends troops and $2.5 million to Springfield after influx of Haitians. To get an idea what this is like, that town has like 60,000 people, and a quarter of them are now Haitians, which have been taken, bussed into that community. It's crazy. Imagine what would happen if that happened here. Housing would be terrible, and once again, that has been one of the problems. The housing has been pointed out to be terrible. They're once again, these non-government organizations are getting millions of dollars to put 10 and 12 people into a one-bedroom apartment. It's dumb the way it's being done. It's stupid. The petition is created to recall the entire Springfield City Commission after the Haitian influx. So, the ABC News keeps coming out, well, we talked to the mayor. Well, you know what? Yeah, apparently everybody's trying to get rid of him because of his actions. So I don't know how much I'd count on him. 86% of Americans want proof of citizenship to vote. Why are Biden and Harris so against it? The administration strongly opposes H.R. 8281, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. It is already illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. It is a federal crime punishable by fines. 86% of the Americans concur with the statement proof of U.S. citizenship should be required to register to vote. But the Biden administration argues that that safeguard is already in place, even though there are states that have 4,000 and 5,000 that they've admitted are illegals on their voting rules that have voted already.
A harsh spotlight on migrant crime as immigration is a top issue for voters. Authorities arrested at least 6 illegal migrants accused of heinous, violent crimes just this week. One of them, a Peruvian gang leader, wanted for 23 murders. Also, a Haitian migrant who allegedly raped a pregnant woman at a migrant shelter in Massachusetts. Fox News polling shows 44% of voters think that the situation at the southern border is an emergency. 43% say it's a major problem. In 2021, President Biden assigned Kamala Harris to lead White House efforts to address migration challenges. GOP lawmakers say she did the opposite.
Kamala Harris has her fingerprints on all the destruction that we've seen. She voted against Title 42 when she was in the Senate, and she was the border czar and has done nothing to quell, again, the invasion that we've seen on our southern border.
Peter Ducey is at the White House with much more. Hey, Peter.
Taking the vice president is still in charge of the root causes of migration to the southern border, so she does, on paper, still have some skin in the game when a Peruvian guy wanted for 23 murders back home crosses the southern border, gets arrested, but then released for more than 3 months. ICE just picked this man, Gianfranco Torres Navarro, from a gang in Peru called Los Killers, up in upstate New York.
Where has she been, and why hasn't she done it? Why hasn't she done it? I hear her complaining all the time. She was the border czar, but she didn't do anything. It's the worst border czar in history.
White House officials are not breaking through very effectively with their argument that the border is just a problem because Trump recently worked to tank a bipartisan deal. 71% of voters in a new Fox poll say Biden's lack of enforcement is to blame for the southern border's problems, and expect the VP to highlight her time before she was in charge of the root causes on the trail.
So I was Attorney General of a border state. I went after the transnational gangs, the drug cartels, and human traffickers. I prosecuted them in case after case, and I won.
That was then. This is now. She will be in Battleground, North Carolina later. President Biden is going to be in Battleground, Pennsylvania later on this afternoon, but officials have not told us what exactly he's going to be doing in Philadelphia before heading to Camp David for the weekend. Dagan.
Right. What's going on? What do you...
Okay, this is my last comment about this whole thing. The borders are terrible. They have been, in fact, inundated by terrorists, lowlifes, and I'm not saying everybody. I'm sure out of 10 million people, there are an amount that, in fact, can be useful citizens. But this has also driven down the employer cost, because if you hire these people, you don't pay them as much as an American citizen in many cases, which in fact has kept salaries low in some of these states, especially the ones that they have were figured out to be sanctuary states like New York, Minnesota, Colorado. All of these states are having a rise in crime, and it's a sad state. But this last poster, once again, is the last comment that I have to say about it. Thank you very much for coming.